Welcome to BizBytes, brought to you by ComTogether, helping businesses like yours build their brand through telling amazing stories to engage and grow audiences on multiple platforms. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of BizBytes. And I have a guest with me today that I've got to know a little bit over the last few months, and even enjoyed a lunch we can talk about later on with a whole lot of other people. That was a bit of fun. But James, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. James Hay. I'm a director at CT Group Solutions. We're a national IT business focused on the legal and financial markets, based out of Perth, but with a footprint in each state as of now.
Fantastic, yeah, and it's and you were just telling me before that the business has really grown quite a bit in recent times.
Yeah, look, the 3 years that I've been with the business, and I'm not saying this has anything to do with me whatsoever, but my three other business partners have really sort of positioned us as a national leader. But we've gone from roughly about 22 staff, I think, when I started, to we've just hit 50 staff nationally. So yeah, it's the growth comes at a cost, but it's been a very successful sort of 3 year period.
And I gather, particularly specialising in the legal and financial space, that there are a lot of additional requirements, and I guess there's also that feeling of compliance and that necessity there, which is maybe a little bit different to some of the other professions.
Yeah, certainly. Look, I think data retention for all professions these days and data security is a big sort of key topic of contention. But in terms of the legal and the financial space, obviously recording sensitive information for all clients is going to be held at the utmost, and securing that data is certainly important, and certainly something that we have to focus on as a business, but also deliver to our clients on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is in a day and age where there's so much, I guess, scams that are out there. There's so much people imitating other things and looking for opportunities to I guess do the wrong thing, which is makes it a difficult place to navigate, and there's a lot more reliance on getting the IT part right. Whereas I guess it was only a few years ago that people kind of was just a ticking the box exercise, but there's a lot more emphasis on it now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you just have to look at a few of the more recent breaches, such as Latitude Finance, and prior to that, Medibank, and it's sort of almost a weekly occurrence these days. And I think when it comes down to, I guess, the level of hacking and the level of sort of data breaches, if you bang on a door hard enough, people generally find a way in. So making sure that you are compliant is a huge part of that, especially the government's very aware of controlling that data and ensuring security around it. So things like the Essential 8, which are being released I think 2024-25, and auditing around security of data security is going to be a huge part of focus, especially in that legal and financial sector.
Yeah, I mean, and I particularly, somewhere in both of those sectors, there's a lot of confidential information that gets given to people, in that on all sorts of different areas. And it's interesting because there's a level of trust that you have with your lawyer, with your financial advisor, with your accountant, and which is fine. And there's a lot of things that those professions do to establish that trust, but the fact of the matter is most of the information is passed on via websites and via emails and other electronic means. And wow, it's just it's scary how much information is passed on that way, and there's kind of a blind expectation that it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I think there is, and I think there's a trust factor. I mean, these industries are heavily relationship and reputationally, respected. And I think when you're giving sensitive information, you do trust that you are giving it to the right people. Securing that data and ensuring that you have that security is massive, but also making sure that you've got the insurance backing it up. We're seeing more and more of our clients specifically asking for asking us to help with their insurance applications and getting their insurance up to date and ensuring, I think, going through that process to get the additional benefits of a lower premium is doing all the checks at the background with your IT company. So we are spending a lot of time with our clients, making sure that they tick all the boxes to make sure that they are secured, and that hopefully will give their clients in turn more confidence in where they are spending their data.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is it's become something that I think people are actually talking about, which is really interesting because it really wasn't that long ago where it was not a hot discussion topic, and I guess you would remember these times where they were trying to convince anyone that you needed to do any of this stuff was pushing it uphill, right?
Yeah, look, it's come a long way very fast, I think, in the last sort of 5 years, but it has always been something I think at the back of mind. I think the sort of expansion of the, I guess, dark web and people able to sell this data on to other people quite easily has made it a lot more difficult. But it also, the Western world and the amount of digital currency and I guess digital information that we have flowing around, it just, it does make us a sort of prime target for any sort of, I guess, any sort of hacking and data stealing sort of exercise.
Yes. Well, look, and I wanted to just go away from that for a little bit, a little while, firstly, and come back to you, and tell me a little bit about your journey, James, and how you got into this area. Where did it begin? Like, was this was IT the space that you wanted to be in when you originally speaking school university days?
No, no, definitely not, Anthony. Look, I've been working. I've been in sales now since I was sort of 14. I think my first job, which I can tell you, my first job at 14 and 9 months was the Pizza Hut call center. University wasn't something that I was that interested in. I think once I got to the end of school, I just wanted to start or keep working. Sales has always been an area that I've been working in, and it's always been an area that I've had held jobs for well since I was 14. So I think the legal industry, and I guess not so much tech, but more so just law and accounting is where I've spent the majority of the last 16, 17 years. From Thomson Reuters, I worked in Hong Kong and Australia with LexisNexis, and then more recently with QuickFee in my last role in the sort of finance segment. So anything from resources, software, to then finance with QuickFee. I sort of saw when CT Group approached me originally, they were looking at expanding out to the East Coast, and they had a couple of options from their directors at the time, which was they were looking at either diversifying on the West Coast and looking at going into engineering, architecture, consulting other areas and professional services you can support, or maintaining, I guess, that level of specialization where our staff are trained and sort of understand the practice management systems, the software suites that legal and lawyers and accountants use. And so I think with that specialization in mind, they got in contact with a few people to recommend, and I went through the process, having a chat with the team. And to be honest, I wasn't really looking at leaving QuickFit at the time, and I sort of mentioned to the guys that I really wanted to be involved in something, and they put down a potential buy-in and ownership over a few years, and yeah, managed to it sort of gave me a kick to really help them grow this business. So I was the first employee on the East Coast, and yeah, tech was not an area I'd really understood, but I guess in terms of my experience up until that point, having the sort of software, the resources, the financial, the operational side, and I guess technology and software generally, they're in the top three or the third largest expenditure on your balance sheet. It just seemed a nice rounding off of I guess knowledge for me in terms of the legal and the accounting space. So yeah, look, I mean, it's still learning every day. I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert in the security side of our business, the data center security of our data centers. One thing that our managing director Anton Teese has done very well is he's got a director group in that specialize in their, I guess, silos of business. So we all have our own role to play, but they all intertwine. And I think from, I guess, the perspective of where we go to market is we all have an expertise in a certain area. Mine is definitely the relationship and reputation side of the business and being able to further the brand on a national scale. But also I know that I'm backed by three people or three business partners that will will give expert opinion on their areas as well.
I love the way the business is set up, but particularly I'm interested in as well that whole idea of coming out of the security of working for a big organization, or a decent sized one anyway, and then coming in and effectively buying into a business, or getting an ownership of that. That was that something that you'd ever considered before?
It wasn't. I mean, my first experience with moving from sort of a big business into a smaller business was the move into QuickFee, and QuickFee was an established business of I think 8 to 10 years, and well recognized, or becoming well recognized in market. But we're only about 10 to 12 employees in Australia when I started there, and I learned very quickly from our CEO Bruce Coombs, who was just a phenomenal businessman. But watching him learn how important going to or your reputation is, and how important for a small business to rely on relationships. And people do buy from people they like. I think it's a huge part of selling is ensuring that if that relationship's there and reputation's there, it's if it's not now, it's when. So we look at, and I look at I guess our go to market as a very long term strategy, especially when it's a technology move. It is a big process. It's also a big it's a big move for a business to decide to make. We also know that if we don't get a contract, it's nothing personal. So it is really, I always want to make sure that I'm put in a position that we've always got a chance. So in terms of your question, I think from going from a big business to a small business, there's nothing really to hide behind. Target wise, growth wise, there are clear defined roles within that organization that if they're not hit, it's very obvious that they where we're sort of failing. I think in a large business, it's easy to I guess fall into the shadows, or sort of hide behind others, or play the blame game. But small business, there's a lot more responsibility, and you also with that got a lot more input into the direction. So I think it took me probably a year at QuickFee to really understand that properly and really sort of push forward with it. I think now, having the experience I did coming into this business, has given me a real go at helping shape it, the way that I guess our values, and I guess the way that the my director group sort of see our long term future looking.
I think it's fantastic that there's such an emphasis on values as well. I'm big on talking about that, because often we attract the wrong people because we tell the wrong stories, and there's a difference between what you think you should be saying and what you actually are saying about you, and what you actually are around your values. And the more that you bring those stories over, the more that you're going to attract the right people, and be they the clients, or be they potential staff members or supporters or suppliers or anything else, people will align themselves naturally with those values. And that being in touch with who you are as a business is such a critical exercise to be doing on a fairly regular basis, particularly in your situation where you're expanding on a fairly rapid way.
Yeah, definitely. And look, you can see from the teams that we have in the business, and I'm talking sort of from an operational standpoint, from a project standpoint, they're all very close knit teams. We've got a very good culture internally, which has made it just a lot easier from a management perspective to work with. I myself, I've got a very small team, so my team's very easy to manage at the moment, but that's ever growing, and I am always on the lookout for New South Wales specifically at the moment, as well as Queensland, as our sort of next areas of growth from a sales side of things. But yeah, you're right, and I think that's it's a hard thing to implement. We've had sort of a tendency to hire slow and fire fast, and I know it sounds quite sort of strict and sort of down the line, but from a culture perspective, it is super important that we know that our staff are paid by our clients. They're not paid by the director group. It's our clients that are keeping food on the table and keeping us growing at the right pace. So it is super important that, I think, from a service level, being a service business, we're able to deliver that. And it's very quick to see certain staff that I guess can't, or just don't have that I guess level of service in them.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great attitude to have when it's coming to to engaging with these businesses, and particularly I find it interesting. I mean, with the legal and legal profession particularly, do you find that they've got enough of a focus on their values? Do you think they understand that kind of idea?
Look, I think the legal profession, they're just like any business. Some do have a great sort of key, I guess, key line to their values. Others, they might be practicing lawyers who have gone out on their own, and they're not really equipped to manage a business. So those values sort of get lost in translation, I think. So I think generally speaking, established legal firms and the ones that have sort of clear and transparent goals that they set to their staff definitely share those values, and they're the businesses that we sort of align with, and we also see them as I guess our ideal client to work with, because it does make it a lot easier. I mean, we're dealing in the service side of things from a tech perspective. Is we could get a call and it could be user error, but we need to shoulder that for the partner or for the associate or for the admin staff in that business, to regardless of how irate they might be, and we need to obviously get a fix for them in a very quick time and make sure it's done right the first time.
Yes, it's one of those things, isn't it, in this space that people don't often want to admit that they were the problem, right? That they did something wrong, and how often is it? I mean, uh, I know the standard IT responses if you try turning it off and turning it back on again, but the truth is that user error does account for a fair amount of issues, and it is, but it comes down to how you're going to be able to deal with that, as you say, and if people appreciate that regardless that you're there to help.
Well, that's right. And look, from our perspective, it can't be a user error. Regardless of what the error is, it's now our sort of our ticket to deal with, and we need to shoulder that and make sure that we fix it for the client, regardless of what that issue is. And I know we very rarely ask anyone to turn anything off and turn it on again, but it's a well-known sort of quip in the IT space.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you though, James, as well, getting drifting away back from this and back into the your specific area of sales. Um, why do you think sales was the area that you always wanted to go into originally? What was the natural drive towards that?
It's a good question. I don't think it was a natural drive. At the time of my life, sort of when I was young, school I didn't really enjoy it. It wasn't something that I wanted to focus on. And by the time I finished year 12, study was the last thing on my mind. So sales seemed like the easiest way to make money. Um, Realistically, I think I had a lot of goals when I was a teenager to sort of buy into property and go all sorts of ways. And in hindsight, I really wish I'd saved a bit better in those sort of early days. But I think sales just seemed like a sort of a quick access to give myself a leg up or to allow me to do the things that I wanted. So I think it wasn't really something that I was driven towards, but it's now something that I really enjoy doing. And I think it's more so that I found my space in sales. I'm not a typical salesperson. I haven't made a cold call in God knows how many years, and it's something that I flat out refuse to do. I will always focus on relationships, and those relationships generate leads from the people that I've met, the people that I know. Utilizing LinkedIn, if I see someone that I want to speak to at a certain firm, or I've heard that they're disinterested in their IT or they're unsatisfied, and I would love to speak to that firm. I would ask for a warm introduction in from someone that I could find knew the right contact of that business. So I think in the last 6 years, and this was mainly a learning curve through QuickFee, where I'd started there, and I think the business had brought me on to really with the idea that I had a book of contacts. And prior to that, I'd been working the barrister market, which didn't have the business that we were looking for at QuickFee. So I really had to utilize, I guess, all sorts of ideas. It was emails, and that would have been the last time I cold called, would be the first 3 months of that, almost 8 years ago. And I think really from a sales perspective, it made me realize that I think going through the different processes of either engaging coldly, just sending out blanket emails, to then figuring out ways that I could utilize Bruce's networking market or his relationship with the business or prior relationship, regardless of being contacted 2 or 3 years before. Also, I guess using a USP, a unique selling point. So telling the story of where quickly had come to at that point. The same story that I'll tell today with CT Group, being the first employee on the East Coast and now having I think 18 employees on the East Coast. It's a great story to tell that the confidence of our clients has sort of helped us grow at that sort of rate. But I think being in this position that I'm in now, relationship and reputation are solely what I would focus on, and it's a sort of employee that I would want coming on board as part of this team. Is someone that can share those values. They want to build their name in market. They want to build their reputation. I think it's you've typically got two types of salespeople when you're talking in any industry. It's the same as in this industry, these industries as well. But you've got one that sort of sells a brand. It could be the Xero guy, the MyOb guy, the Practice Evolve guy, or Leap guy. And then you've got one that sells their brand. So it's James from CT Group rather than it's a CT Group guy. So that's sort of how I see sales and why I really, I might not have been driven here or motivated to be in sales originally, but where I've managed to get to career wise, this is what I really enjoy doing is working with people that I share a mutual respect for, and I think that that's where my relationships within this industry have sort of led me to. I work with great people, the partners of the firms we work with, and the contacts that we have in the legal and the financial industries are just I would consider them sort of personal friends as well as professional contacts. So it's been an interesting sort of 20 years, I guess.
Yeah, it's fantastic to be able to build those relationships in those areas. It does make a huge difference, and I love that differentiation that you've got between sales, between selling the brand and selling yourself as first in there, and because relationships are ultimately what determine where you buy from. People buy from people, right? And so hiding just particularly behind a brand, it can get you through the front door if the brand's well known enough, but it doesn't do anything for you and where you're trying to drive. And that's not being so. And I think I think commonly there'd be some businesses that would shy away from that approach because they would think, well, there's a risk that, in your situation, you're an owner, but if you're not an owner, then selling yourself that way runs the risk for the business that if that person leaves, and let's face it, people move from job to job and at times in their life, that you don't want all of those clients picking up and moving with them.
That's right. And look, I think there's a lot to unpack with sort of thinking that down that path, but I think it's more beneficial than it is non. And I think the difference in how you sell and the products that you're selling sort of lead you to be one of those two salespeople. I think we focus on long-term agreements anyway. It is a big move to move IT, but holding those relationships is super important, and we're not a transactional sales organization. So I think a lot of transactional sales businesses, if we were selling sort of a one-off product or something that can be sort of set and forget, you would have salespeople just turning 40 calls a day, doing sort of working as a soldier for the business, just selling as much as they can. We're very much not a product like that at all. We are service based. We're human cost associated with our service levels, and it's super important to sell on relationships. And I don't think worrying about where a person decides to go with their career is anything that I would rather them build those relationships. And the relationship in our business isn't just with the salesperson. We've got a clear process when once we onboard, we hand over to projects team to onboard. Projects team then go into our service team, and they get given their own team of customer service or the engineers, so the level 1s to level 3s. So really the relationship with our clients is going to be business wide, and that I wouldn't be worried about people leaving. I think I'd be proud if people could build up their name and sort of go and contact people outside of if they decided to move on. I think that shows that we've done something right in our business. Because I wouldn't expect anyone to, if they're not an owner, or if they find something better, or whatever it is, if they need career progression, people should always know what their value is. So I think that that's a super important part of management, is recognizing the value in your staff, and being first foot. You don't want someone. The last thing I want is one of my staff to find out that one of them had been interviewing for 6 months if they just wanted something slightly different.
I think it's a great attitude, and I definitely love that the way that you've structured the business in that way. And I did want to just ask you as well. You know, setting up on the East Coast from a West Coast business means that you're not all in the room very often together, and you're you know, that's the nature of your business anyway, isn't it? That people are dispersed. You know, how does that how do you overcome that dynamic as a business, particularly when you're talking so heavily reliant on shared values? Does that factor into it, that people are prepared to be, you know, working hard but still within the context of you know, even if they're not in the same room together?
Yeah, look, again, great question, Anthony. We on the East Coast, we are all remote workers. So I think there's three or four of us that have access to a sort of shared space in the city, should we need it. But building this business on the East Coast, we know that our staff, and we know that the staff on the East Coast, you know, young families or whatever, they have loved the work from home. They do need to be on site when they need to be on site, and that might be once a week, it might be twice a week, some weeks it might be for a whole week. So I think from our perspective, it doesn't. I know that we're not going to start an office anytime soon on the East Coast. That will be sort of pushing people to attend on a frequent basis. We do have a head office and a big office over in Perth. The guys there, you know, have a great culture and a great in-office culture. I think the East Coast being built on remote work is quite different, but we do quarterly catch-ups in person, and I think having that face time with the staff, regardless of the different areas of the business that they work in, is super important. And you know, as I've said, you know, the guys get along with each other really well. We've got a great culture and a great team. But I do think it's important to have those quarterly catch ups, as well as the check ins. Though I mean, they're always speaking with each other on teams, and we have a very sort of clear direction in terms of upskilling our service staff, where you know, the level ones, if one of our sort of firm policies is not to transfer clients internally. If you're the one that's been given one of the tickets, the issues, you're a level one, but it's a level three issue. We encourage our level ones to work with our level threes to close out that ticket, to sort of help with the constant upskilling, but it also helps with building relationships internally and continue, I guess, from a business continuity perspective, keeping that engagement ongoing, and also sort of progression career-wise ongoing internally.
Just before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you as well, and this is an interesting one for someone who's in sales, and therefore is not necessarily managing the clients on a day-to-day basis. But where do you think that there's an aha moment for the clients that have gone, we're really glad we've chosen to go with you guys? Does it happen during the sales process, or does it more happen at a point when they're starting to work with you?
Yeah, look, great question. I can tell you some sort of feedback from some of our more recently onboarded clients, but in terms of that aha moment, I think it's the ease of process through the onboarding. We sort of shelter our clients from the transfer of data, but also a clear sort of direction of, you know, you hand it over from the sales, which you've got a great relationship with. You've gone through a benchmarking process with the project team, so you've already been introduced to that team. The smooth sort of transition from that point is the onboarding could take, if it's a cloud deployment, and you know, depending on, I guess, what resources you've sort of gone down the path of, could take a 6 to sort of 10 week period. By the time that you're onboarded and then handed over to the service, you've already engaged with us potentially for 3 months. We've had some clients that, you know, we will engage with at the moment. I've got some that I've been working with for 3 years, to sort of get to the point that they're comfortable to make that move, or that they're out of contract. So through all that period, you've been engaged with us the whole time, so you know what you're getting. When you're onboarded, that aha moment comes from that sort of initial 3 month account management meeting, where there's 2 account management meetings that we do on a quarterly basis with our clients. One from a customer service perspective, talking about tickets, trying to see if there's any inherent, I guess, ongoing issues with specific staff, if there's something with specific products, software, whatever it is. The other one's more technical and more of a future conversation. It's what are you guys looking at doing? What's the business wanting to achieve over the next 18, 24 months? I think one of the best lot of feedback I had was from quite a large client in Melbourne that we signed, who came back to me after 6 months. They'd gone through a huge amount of projects just to onboard, upgrade of machines, upgrade of software. They deployed everything to their staff. And one of the things that their IT manager came back to me on was it said it's great to start talking about the future and to start talking about what's next, and to look at these options. So I think from where they had come to, I guess, where we had sort of structured them and sort of got them onboarded at, they could start looking now, regardless of cost efficiencies, regardless of staff efficiencies, time efficiencies, all of those sorts of areas that we already focused on in the proposal, they could start talking about tech efficiencies long term. So what they can implement and what they can look at doing over, a 3 to 5 year period.
Fantastic, James. I've really enjoyed the journey, that not only your personal journey that you've been on, but the journey that you take your clients on. I love the relationship building and the story that goes around that, and the patience that you exude in managing those relationships over a period of time before they convert. And it's very refreshing to hear a sales process that is not knocking on your door, almost cold calling, going, just come and buy from us straight away. And full credit to you and the way you've built the business and the way it continues to grow. Thank you so much for being a fantastic guest on BizBytes. I really appreciate the conversation.
Oh, thanks, Anthony. I appreciate you including me.
And thank you everyone for listening in. And we'll be back next time with another edition of BizBytes. BizBytes is brought to you by ComTogether for all your marketing needs so you can build your brand, engage audiences on multiple platforms. Go to comtogether.com.au, follow the links to book an appointment for a free consultation.